I actually met my first property mentor in the back of an Uber. I was on the way to a work party, and as we waited outside our little our office, a luxury Mercedes-Benz C-Class pulled up, and as I kind of nestled my way into these amazingly comfy leather seats, I thought, damn, man, I am glad I'm not the one footing the bill for this trip. Our driver, though, I looked over at him. I'm like, hey, man, what's going on here? He had track pants on and he had paint splattered all over him. And he just looked like a normal dude. And anyway, we got chatting and we ended up talking about my favorite topic, which happened to be property investing at the time. I was so enthusiastic. I was telling everyone about property, and everyone else in the car, they ignored it completely. They didn't care. But what happened was we got talking and he started to tell me his story. And this Mercedes-Benz was his 40th birthday present to himself. So he didn't drive it often enough. Like, he wasn't experiencing enough. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to do this whole Uber thing. So we actually talked through how he got to where he was and all of his projects along the way. And he taught me a whole heap. Like, what we actually chatted through was how he got there. And it was simple. All he did was he would buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. And that's it. None of the guys in the back cared. I was there enthralled. And I took my shot. I said to him, hey, mate, can I come and see these renovation projects with you? And you know what he said? Yeah, man, of course. And that's how I got my first property mentor. He had this whole elaborate escape plan based around this simple framework. And I too, I have an escape plan. I wanted to get away from it. This guy helped me craft my escape plan, and I've now achieved the thing that I wanted to do. So I guess, what has this got to do with today's session? So the thing is, today's sessions is about an unreal guy. He's got a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, and he used to drive an Uber. So he could be that mentor for you. You know, I could have run into him at some point in time while he was driving his Ubers, and, you know, it could have sparked a whole thing. But your mentors can be anywhere. So just know that. And tonight we have Taku Ekanayake from Kinfin Financial, and he's here to unpack his story. His step-by-step process of how he went from 0 properties. And the big thing for me is, like, this was hard. This guy was working Uber to afford his portfolio. So anyone that thinks, oh my gosh, the interest rates are so high right now, it's really difficult to buy an investment property. It's always been hard. To achieve anything of value, it's always been hard. But in this session, there are a few tips and tricks and sessions that you can unpack. Anyway, I've been talking too much, so let's just jump straight into the session. My name is Joe Tucker, and together with Jeff Miles, we created Oz Property Investors. For those that don't know, that is Australia's largest property investment forum. We have amazing people in there. Each week we interview top property experts. Let's get in. Let's do it.
And we are live on Oz Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. And we got Taku Ekanayake on live. I thought I did okay today. I did. Yeah. I'm better than what I was.
Almost got it out.
I feel like that's not his name.
How's you going anyway, man? You keeping cool?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, keeping cool. As you can see, it's one of those days and weathers where it requires a woolly coat. So,
no.
Get it done, guys. I'm fabulous, mate. I'm flat out like a lizard drinking. To be honest, the property market right now is going absolutely bananas in some spots, and then it's super subdued in others, which I'm finding very interesting. But I'm just like, when you go through enough cycles, you just see the tide coming in and going out, and you're like, okay, cool. Well, at least in this market, we haven't got all the competition, but it does eventually come, which is not what I'm looking forward to.
It does.
Those are the questions.
As long as you're getting there first and fast, right?
Well, that's it. Like, as an investor, where do you want to be buying? Do you want to be buying at the top of the market where you're going to get, you know, some good growth in the next 6 months? Or are you looking at from a long-term perspective, you want to get the growth in the next 2 to 3 years, rather than where is the next Perth, I guess is kind of one of the questions that I keep hearing thrown around. But how are you, Jeff, mate? How are you?
I'm good. Don't even have to post the link in the group. It automatically just loads. How good is that? So no, going really well, mate. It's more like whereas next council, like Perth is so 2022, man. Perth is like yesterday's 2023. It's done. Wait, who's talking about Perth? I haven't seen a post about Perth in the last 20 minutes. Nothing's going on there.
Still good. No, there's still good pockets.
Yeah. It's it's going to be. Taku and I were talking prior to the show. We first caught up in about 2014, 2015 at I believe around the Shark Hotel. Not I believe it was at the Shark Hotel. You were running Property Chat, which is a little cool little forum out there which is
You were
formerly
running Property Chat.
Well,
I
he was
wasn't
running
running
the
it.
meetups.
One of the meetups there. So yeah, right in the
Nice.
city, good old Shark Hotel.
Yeah.
Nice.
So and you've gone on an absolute journey since then. We've both gone on journeys, and I'm excited though to hear about your investor story, how you sort of built that portfolio, and the sort of research and the learnings, and what you're sort of seeing out there in today's lending market as well. Because a lot of people say, oh, you can't do that kind of 6 properties in 2 years, and yes, you're fortunate that lending was a little bit looser back then, but I think there's some key learnings from what you did, and we're going to go through that. So it's going to be an amazing session. So drop your questions. Look, it's easy for us to see it on YouTube these days because Facebook's doing something different, but that's okay. Drop the comments. We'll just put them up on the screen. So we'll introduce, we'll introduce who you are, and then we'll go into us asking the standard question.
Cool.
So Taku,
Sounds good.
you are. I love your summary, mate. You've got a very easy to talk to. You're an active property investor, award-winning mortgage broker, and you sort of embarked on your journey at the age of 26. So that was probably, what was that, sort of 2014?
Take me, ish. I think. Well, I'm 35 now, so that was 9 years ago. So
and you are the Uber driving investor. I remember you were.
I can never shake
you
that
probably
off,
didn't
can
like
I? That the Uber X driver will always haunt me for a lifetime, I think.
Yeah. And
But if you
in
can give
6
other
years though, you
people
bought that sort
inspiration,
of built that portfolio and sort of then consolidated. But you also renovating and looking to leverage those to the future. So it's not dissimilar to what people are doing today. So everything's kind of changes but stays the same. Thing I love about you as well, you're also about you're honing your boxing technique as well, and you're indulging your passion for food by exploring new bars and restaurants. How good is that?
Always. Yes. I need to do the boxing to make sure I maintain my weight while I'm exploring all those new restaurants and foods and whatnot. So otherwise, yeah, I get a bit pudgy around the edges, which I have been lately.
And we all.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Jeff, you definitely haven't. Look, you still look like you were when you were, when we met 10 years ago.
I don't know about that. Black is a very slimming color. But so the question we love, I'm really super excited to have you on the show. The question I love sort of asking, we love asking people first up is, how did you get into, what got you started on your property journey?
What got me started into the property journey?
Yeah.
Was it couldn't go the long answer. I could take it a pretty long time, but I'll try to shorten it up as possible.
You take
all
as
right,
long as
sounds good. You know what? Like growing up as a kid, you have those. Well, I had those dreams and aspirations to always, own a nice home, have a nice car, beachfront home, and those sort of things. And eventually, climb the corporate ladder, and or either that, or maybe build your own business and be your own boss. But as time went by, and going through high school and going through university, and then even a few years removed from that, and working in the corporate scene, those kind of dreams became a bit more of a distant memory. Like, shamefully, I could say, like, I started to focus a little bit more on other non-productive priorities. Once you first get that freedom outside of uni, start earning a paycheck, all you want to do is, go out and go clubbing or hang out with mates and, do those things where, it was well and good, had great time, had good memories and, great experiences, but didn't really have anything like that tangible to show for it at the end of it all. Empty bank account, nothing for the future. And then it just became a bit of although it was fun, it was just monotonous every weekend, just, blowing your paycheck over the weekends. And then it was leading up probably towards my mid to early 20s. I realized, hey, look, if I still want to, create those dreams that I had as a kid, then I'm going to have to make a big, big change. And obviously my mates weren't going to change. They were still happy doing what they were doing. So it really was on me to really make that shift and really improve my self-development and, really focus on my personal development and, go another route than what my mates were doing. So really with that, I started to research a lot more into that space and how to create financial freedom. And
was there a book? Was there a book that kicked everything off? Like, what was that transition point, and how did you kind of like flick that switch over?
There absolutely was, and if I feel like every other investor, I feel have a similar sort of path, but it's definitely was. There was two books that stood out: Think and Grow Rich, but the other
Yeah.
one was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Right. So obviously the concept of
You're
how
taking the Joe Tucker trail here.
absolutely. I think a lot of that's riding that train as well, right in the beginning. But yeah, obviously the concept of how the wealthy accumulate income producing assets and the middle class or the poor obtain liabilities. And one thing that really stood out to me with that liability aspect was your own home can be seen as a liability from the way that he explained it. And I thought to create wealth was mainly stored in your own owner occupier, and that's how you really get a leg up in the world.
Yeah.
But he really switched that way of thinking to show that that was a liability, and how about focusing on the investment route and going down the income producing assets and creating a portfolio that way to really free up your time to create that freedom to do whatever you wanted to do. So it was a big mindset shift. Looking back on it now, it seems so obvious, but being new into that space, it's like it was a very foreign concept to me, right? Growing up. So, and I'm still reminded of it today. Like I'll have weekly conversations with good mates of mine. They know what I've done, and also even our clients. They might come to me and say, "Hey, look, I want to purchase this home to live in," and they have all these aspirations and goals about that home. But then when you dig a little bit further and try to understand, okay, why are they doing it and what's the long-term outcome that they're trying to achieve, a lot of the times it comes down to creating freedom so I can reduce my work hours, work less, spend more time with family, or spend more time not having to worry about a salary, so I can focus on other future endeavors. And you realize, okay, purchasing your own home, as great as that is, and it's an accomplishment, that might hinder you to achieve those goals at the rate that you want to. And it's really about switching that mindset. And I think it was that book that really did it for me.
Yeah.
For sure.
I find it super interesting because I'm getting a lot more people at this time that are, our age, millennials. Are we millennials? Are we millennials in your 30s?
I think
I don't
we
know.
are.
Actually.
Are we
I
Gen
think,
Y? Gen
we're
Z?
millennials. Close enough.
We're millennials? Okay, cool. I'm getting a lot more people like our age that are coming up and saying like, oh, you know what? I'm never going to be able to buy, like I live in Cronulla. The ultimate goal is to buy a really nice house in Cronulla. Any really nice house in Cronulla is $5-6 million.
Yeah.
And it's coming to that realization of, well, I know I'm not going to be able to afford, if I work my PAYG job and keep saving on my PAYG job, my 30, 40 grand a year, 20 grand a year, whatever that number is, the calculations just don't make sense. I will never be able to obtain that Sydney, that Cronulla, that Marrickville, that whatever it is house that I want to be able to achieve. So what am I going to do? What are the options? And I think as soon as that reality check hits you, you're like, shit, no one actually cares. No one cares about your property dreams. No one cares about your house dreams. It's how are you going to be the one to take control and make that happen? And what I'm seeing now are like, I have X amount of capital and X amount of borrowing capacity. If I buy $1 million property, I'm a
I couldn't help myself.
man. I think as soon as I started in business, I just accumulated gray hair. So they are multiplying. They are like Medusa. You pull one and you get 3 others coming up. So
I've lost
but
most of mine.
Okay.
it's super interesting because people, they're not going to be able to afford to buy in Sydney. So how do you do it?
Exactly.
And now, like if you look at people that have started creating portfolios in South Australia, WA, they now have 3 or 4 properties that have grown $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 each. In 10 years' time, they're going to be able to come back with a large chunk of equity and be able to buy their PPOR, their 5 million, 6 million. I mean, obviously it's not going to be $5 and $6 million in that 10, 15 year period of time. It's going to be more, but it's going to have grown a lot more than trying to save their way to $1 million. So, yeah, it's interesting that you kind of talk about that.
I tell you how they're going to do it, Joe. They're going to do it via inheritance. I mean, they're not going. That's the way they're going to inherit money, or they're
Well,
otherwise they probably won't.
Fortunately, we don't all have that. I don't have that. I don't have any inheritance coming my way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will.
I don't want to live in Cronulla anyway. It's all good, man. I'll take a nice house down here in Nagong any day of the week. Yeah. But no, it's going to be exciting to unpack your journey. Before we do that, I think we'll throw to our first sponsor and then crack into it, shall we?
Let's rock and bloody roll. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the master of commercial property investing, Steve Polisi.
I love commercial property.
Get ready to have your minds blown as Steve is back and he's got some pretty exciting news for us. Steve is unleashing his second sensational book upon the world, and get this, for the Oz Property Investors members out there, he's giving it away absolutely free. Yep, 100% free. Yep, 100% free for all property enthusiasts who want to learn and grow on their commercial property investing journey. But he's also added a little extra chili to make this deal even spicier. With this free book, you'll also receive a complimentary 1-hour strategy session with the man himself. Imagine a full 60 minutes with Steve's commercial and property genius dedicated to helping you master the intricate dance of commercial property investing. And who better to dance with the man who looked better than Patrick Swayze in Dirty Dancing? I don't know about that. Want to grab this offer? It's super easy. If you're live right now, click the link in the comments and secure it today. If not, grab your device, open up the browser, head over to polisiproperty.com, look for the book page and grab your free copy of Steve's latest masterpiece. And when you're checking out, make sure to use the exclusive code OZPROP to secure the free book and also your free 1-hour strategy session. My only concern with this offer is that Steve's going to have to turn it off soon, as he can only do so many sessions. So if you want to secure your spot, do so today. Oh, nearly passed out there.
Beauty.
He's got that crazy course that he's released as well. If you jump on another link, but we'll talk. I think we've spoken enough about. But I wanted to know because you started. What is it that made you decide that Uber was? A lot of people go and get a second job at Macca's, or they go and pour beers, or they go and work at Domino's. Why was it Uber?
Yes.
Is because Uber was the most profitable, or?
I mean, Uber was a relatively new concept at the time, right? And I realized, so backtracking a little bit before I started the Uber, because when I purchased my first property, so as I mentioned, I had to save a little bit because I didn't have the means to, because I was just going out on the weekends and blowing my paycheck. So I started with perhaps maybe 5-10K in the bank account.
Right.
So once I was looking in my backyard on, okay, can I afford a property in Sydney? Like you mentioned, prices are just through the roof. And even at that time, you were looking 700-800K for a property. And if I just calculate even with a minimum deposit on an investment, 10% plus costs of stamp duty incidentals, you're looking at about 100K. It was just going to take me way too long to save for that purchase. So I was forced to look elsewhere. And with that, I started looking online a little bit and then came across a forum. That's where we met Jeff, Property Chat. But previous to Property Chat and got rebranded, it was Summersoft. And then there was a whole new world there of investors and Sydney investors, now called borderless investors, that invested in other areas, other states. And for half the price, you can still buy in those, in capital cities, on the fringes, no doubt. It's not like right in the heart of the city, but half the price, and took me half the time to be able to get that nest egg to purchase that first property. But after I purchased that first property, I didn't really have too much of a strategy on.
Did you do much research into it? Like, where did you end up buying that first sucker, and like, how did you determine, what, this is the place, this is where I'm going, this is me?
Yeah, definitely did a lot of research. So throughout that 3 years where I was just grinding and working and saving and completely focusing on that goal, doing a lot of online research, speaking to experienced investors through that forum, and I identified 2 areas, one around Melbourne, on the fringes around that Frankston area, which was still sitting at about 400K at the time, 450. The one thing about that though was the yields was what was concerning to me. Didn't have a great income job, so holding a property with multiple properties around that area was going to cost me an arm and a leg, and there was only that far I could get, because the yields were, on that 400K property, maybe 300, 350 a week. The other area that I was looking in was Brisbane on the fringes. So it was probably about 10 kilometers further away from the airport. So still just on the fringe of the Brisbane City Council, but 400K, you can find something around 450, 500 a week rent. And after calculating the numbers and crunching those numbers, that looked a lot more appealing to me. So that's why I decided on Brisbane as the first purchase.
Happy days. I bet you're pumped with and chuffed with that purchase.
Yeah, I mean, like, it did take a while for any growth to happen with that property, but it's definitely paid.
Yeah, you probably would have seen more short-term growth in Melbourne at that
For sure.
time,
Yeah, absolutely.
then you would have seen short-term growth in Brisbane at that time.
Yeah,
Brisbane,
exactly.
Brisbane tracked sideways largely for 5 years, because you bought that probably 2014, didn't you? 2013, 2014?
Yeah, there or thereabouts. I can't really exactly remember the date, but it was 2014. It could have even been 2015 or on either side, but yeah.
Yeah, because I know that much. And are we talking, when you say close to the airport, are you up sort of Kalanga way? Are you sort
it was
of
Brackenridge. It was Brackenridge. So,
Yeah, we know Bracken
near
pretty well.
Fitzgibbon, Tagum, that area. Bought that for 378. It was renting at 430 at the time. So it's kind of hitting those parameters and the numbers that I was looking at.
Hey.
And I found that, like, when you say, did I do research? Obviously, I did my research online, but I really just found it the old school way, which was, booking a ticket, one return ticket on the same day, finding maybe 7 to 8 opens to go to. On that last open I went to, there wasn't many people going through that open, but he ticked the boxes from a fundamental perspective, and the numbers worked out well. So I put in an offer. And then after I put in the offer, they said, okay, we'll get back to you over the next few days after speaking with the owner. So I was off back to the airport, but I still had a few hours to kill anyway. But then I got a call from the agent 30 minutes later saying, hey, are you still in town? Can you circle back if you've got time and come into the office, and, we can close the deal. We've spoken to the owners.
Yeah,
so
right.
I did that, purchased first property. Yeah, but looking back on it, to be honest, I probably overpaid for it for them to be that keen for me to turn around after half hour to sign on the dotted line. Probably meant that, I was definitely paying overs for it. But I guess, time's a great equalizer. Now I don't really think about it now that it's doubled over itself plus more. But,
it's probably 850 or something like that in Brackenridge now. 800.
Yeah, we got a recent valuation early this year, and I think it was about 780, 790. So somewhere around there. Yeah.
It's done well. What was what was your process leading up? Did you literally do the first flight up there you bought the property, or did you sort of fly up a couple of times?
No, it was that first flight up. I'm
wow.
Like a true salesman, I'm the easiest to get sold to. And when I've got a goal and a mission, I just get too excited with it sometimes. And I went into even that office not knowing what like a building and pest clause was, or a finance clause. And I didn't even ask for it, but luckily they had it already implemented within that contract. So I think I had 7 or 14 days to be able to get those things done. But that's how ignorant I was in terms of going into that first purchase. I was just so committed on the goal of buying that first property. Right.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's like you took action and tried to make it happen, and you overpaid for it, and you suffered. You suffered for that. Like, if you did buy a great deal, you would have saved 10, 15, 20 grand. But you took action. And time, exactly like what you said, is the great equalizer. It's allowed you to continue your property investing journey over the people that don't take action but nail it perfectly, right? Oh my gosh, this thing has to, like, this T has to be crossed, this I has to be dotted. And you know what? This is, I don't know, what's something like it's on a, like, just offset of a T junction, or it's, 3 stops away from a roundabout, or there's a bus station 2 stops up the road, and they just talk themselves out of the deal. And some of it is if it's in a flood zone, don't buy it. But there are some things where you can kind of be a little bit loosey goosey on some items, and just make it happen. Action's going to give you the best results, because time will heal a lot of the wounds. Or get a professional and make sure that you get everything done properly.
Exactly.
Take a step. I want to take a step back, because we're sort of saying, okay, you flew up there, bought that property, but before you even did that, what was the process? What were you thinking? Were you thinking, okay, I'm going to go and buy 6 properties, or I'm going to buy 2, or just going to take it one step at a time? How are you doing it?
I knew I wanted to build an investment portfolio and buy multiple properties, but I never really had the idea around, okay, what sort of income I'm trying to generate for the lifestyle that I want to live. So I wasn't really strategic in that sense of it. It was more so accumulate properties and pay them off one day, and live off the rental returns. It was only really but was that the question? Did I answer the question? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it sort of sounds like you had a loose plan, but you then sort of went in, you took action, and then sort of you made sure you had some sort of parachute, and then you sort of you checked it on the way down, and it worked.
Yeah. The only problem with that, though, go on.
Yeah, no. Well, I was going to say, what were some of the challenges, and then how has your strategy evolved over the
Yeah.
last, like, how has it changed and shifted? So yeah,
How's it?
what happened?
Yeah, so like the only problem with that, with not really having a strategy behind how to accumulate those properties, was after that first purchase, I blew all my cash, and I was
Yeah,
just back to the square drawing
yeah,
board and didn't really know how to move on to the next one. I didn't have a strategy for you know extracting equity out of the purchase that I just made, and all I knew was, um, okay, just grind away and save as much as you can until you got enough for the next purchase.
yeah,
And looking back on it, I went through a broker originally, for that first purchase, and I feel like he must have been more sort of a transactional broker, where, because like a lot of the questions that we asked today around, what's your long term goal, really understanding what that is and working our way backwards, and really understanding, okay, what is the purpose of you investing in property? What sort of lifestyle are you trying to achieve? What are the timelines involved? Whereas when I had my interaction with the broker originally, it was more so just around, okay, here's the parameters you got to work within. This is your pre approval. This is the rental return that you should be earning. And then go ahead and you can buy that property. Right. So it was really just kind of, all right, back to the drawing board. A year
yeah.
on had passed. Yeah. A year on had passed. And so I was still just working, saving, and then I was still doing my online research. And then that's when I came across, do you remember back in the day, at the news agents, they used to have those Australian property investor magazines and property
Love those.
investor. Like,
Still got far
I
too
don't know.
many.
They still do hard copies.
No,
They
they
stopped
stopped them
it. They
around
stopped it.
around COVID. I used to
Okay.
I subscribed, and I used to wait for them to come in the mail. I'd be like I'd knocking down the door to go and get that magazine from the mailbox. Yeah, it was Joe's
Yes,
going to go.
I was very similar. Like, I was the first in line at the news agency to get that magazine. Not that anyone else was in line at all to get that magazine. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. Look at all the little tabs that I have in here. Every single page has like some tab on there about, oh my gosh, you need to be doing this. You need to be
How
doing
good
this.
were those though? So,
Margaret Lomas gives her insights. Like,
If somebody
so much
knows
value.
Margaret, connect to. I mean, maybe I would chat to Joe about it after. Joe said we could have Margaret on the show as an exception. But before we go on to the next and sort of look at you're looking in your research, I want to know, because there was something that there was potentially a lot of value there for people. You spoke about the difference between a transactional broker versus somebody who's a little more strategic. What is the difference between those two types of brokers?
Okay, the two different types of brokers. The transactional broker, they're going to just be able to. They might come to you, and you might go to that broker and be like, okay, look, we're looking to purchase our first home. We're looking in these areas, and this is what we're looking at buying. Can you do our borrowing capacity? They're pretty much just, looking down a list and taking orders and then running their numbers and then spitting out what you can purchase.
Yeah.
But really, is that what you want? Why are you really purchasing this property? I think a really good broker will ask you a lot of good questions around the long term. What are you really trying to achieve from purchasing this property? What sort of, lifestyle are you trying to have from building a portfolio, for example, and working your way backwards from that? And then also giving you an understanding, especially if you're a new first time or new investor, really
Yeah.
giving you an understanding of what sort of properties you should be looking at to improve your chances of building out that portfolio to get to your goals. So
what does that mean? What types of properties? What's like a type of property that?
Okay, so for example, in my scenario, the type of property that I needed was something that, so when I purchased that, after that purchasing that first property, my second property, it really was more about is that type of property going to enable me to move forward to the next one? So how do I manufacture equity? Is there something that I can do to this property to improve my chances of extracting equity? Not just, obviously it's great to buy below market value, but if I want to move at aggressive pace, my limiting factor was equity and cash to continue to keep moving forward. Although my borrowing capacity wasn't amazing and endless, by my new broker that I met with through that property investment magazine, Michael Shai, I'm sure he's been on your show, right? Yeah.
He was supposed to be on tonight, actually, but yeah, he's super busy, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. He is great guy. But he helped me out so much because he really gave me an understanding of, okay, let's focus on your limiting factor. I've already modeled out a roadmap of how to get to you building out a multiple investment property portfolio by using different lenders at different times. So let's not focus on that. We've got your borrowing capacity down pat. Let's focus on creating equity within each purchase to move on to the next property. So they're the type of things that we needed to identify within within that purchase. For someone else completely different that had endless amount of cash, you might be, or like a large amount of cash, creating equity and going through the very tedious task of doing renos is probably not the right thing for them, perhaps, right? So by understanding your personal situation and then leading you through that journey is the.
How do you explain that to people now? I mean, because you're a broker right now, right? You have these conversations all the time, and how do you kind of simplify that for people? Is it just as easy as that? What is your limited resource? Because it can be, because really we've got borrowing ability and serviceability on one hand, and then cash and equity on the other hand. And it sounded like you didn't have the cash and equity piece, but you had a lot of borrowing piece. So you've got a job that's bringing in you solid income, but it's just, well, I can't save enough. I can't save quickly enough to be able to go for my next one. I don't know. Is there any kind of frameworks that you use, or how do you kind of explain it, or is it as easy as that?
Yeah, I mean, like when we were doing it, we were identifying, okay, how much is it going to take for each purchase? What are the costs to entry for each purchase? So if I was purchasing something for each property around that 300 to 400K mark, I probably needed about 60K plus the renos. You're probably talking, and these weren't extravagant renos, maybe about 10K. So in total, anywhere between 60 to 70K are required. So it was from each property, how are we going to extract that golden magic number of 60 to 70K? Sometimes it comes with a bit of luck, but I was also limited to cash as well. This is where the Uber thing starts to come in. But yeah, it was really trying to get maybe anywhere between 3 to 5x return on investment on that cosmetic reno, and buying well, and then being able to extract 50 to 60K. What that also allowed me to do as well is not only does that increase your equity position, but obviously that increases your rental return. Maybe it was on average around $50 to $80 per week. And that necessarily wasn't free additional cash flow, but whenever you're extracting equity from your property, that's also increasing your debt, increasing your mortgage repayments and holding costs as well. So that additional increase in the rental return really was a bit of a cushion for that additional holding costs of extracting equity. So that was the strategy that we used.
Great idea.
The strategy that my mortgage broker, that he implemented a lot in his building out of his portfolio in the beginning as well, and what he passed on to me. And yeah, without him, I wouldn't have been able to accelerate my property investing portfolio nowhere near, because it was like I bought 5 properties in 13, 14 months there after meeting him. So
yeah, well, this is one of the key points that I think that is really important for people to catch on, is who is in your team. Who is the people that are in your team? Because it will fundamentally change the outcome that you get. Because if you got someone, if you just walk in, anyone can get a broker and just walk into. My first broker was like Rams or whatever. I think it's the purple one, like whatever the purple one is. You walk in there and the guy's like, "You're right," and then terrible experience. He's just like, palming me off, like, let's get the best interest rate. No, what's the best strategy? Like exactly what you're talking about there. But but so don't spend too much time on worrying about the like the 80-20. What is the 80-20? The 80-20 is spend your time trying to build your team. That team will then help you get to your ultimate goal. But if you don't spend very much time, and then you're getting all tedious of trying to find the property yourself, trying to find the loan yourself, trying to find everything yourself, this is very much a team sport. But it's interesting that he made such an impact in your life.
Absolutely. Huge difference. Yeah. Like leaning on that team side of things, it's like, as you create a business yourself, Joe, myself, Jeff, you realize more and more it's all about relationships, right? Whether it's also creating a property investment portfolio, which is a business in itself. It's like creating those relationships and a team of agents that you're going to get access to properties that other people don't. With your property manager and your tradies, especially when I was working 2 jobs with Uber and my other full-time job, and then I was making calls from Sydney to real estate agents in Queensland. they're able to go straight away to view the listings, and the traders can tell me, can quote how much it's going to cost, and I was able to make a purchasing decision off the back of those relationships. So I think that qualitative aspect of the relationships and the wisdom that you can get from your team and also experienced other investors is so critical. It's not just the data side of things, right? And as a buyer's agent yourself, Joe, like like the access to properties you get as opposed to the general public, especially in this heated market, like it's so important.
Well, yeah, it is a different experience because I've obviously got volume. I've got more people. Like building a relationship with me as a real estate agent, like a real estate agent building a relationship with me, I've got 10 times, 20 times the amount of sales. So why would they deal with an everyday normal person that's with one transaction? Whereas they just need to build one relationship with me, and then I can pump through more clients for them.
Exactly.
Obviously, the real difference is making sure that you just don't take any stupid deal that they put forward to you. Making sure that you get a good deal for the people that you're doing it for. But yeah, there is arbitrage. But to me, it comes down to asking good questions. I think the ultimate thing for anybody here is just be curious and feel okay asking the stupid questions, because I'll come to you, Taku, and be like, what is the, from a broking reference, like, how do I get this equity out? What's this whole offset account? And I was chatting with someone the other day, and like, I know this sounds stupid, but why would I need a redraw over an offset? And a broker knows the answer, back to front, but you don't know it at all. So be stupid. It's absolutely fine. Just be comfortable asking those questions, and then you'll be able to get out there and ask better questions, and you get better answers. And I like to deal with people that ask me questions and want to learn and grow and experience things. And I think that that's the best way to go, and that's the best way to get things out of your team. So it is on you to, put yourself out there, ask dumb questions, because there's no such thing as a silly question. I love that.
Unless you're asking, I've got 500K, where do I buy a property? Maybe ask us slightly. Okay, well, you can ask that.
Yeah, depends who you ask. You got to ask.
I wanted to ask Guru, how are second income side gigs assessed by lender? What's
that's a fantastic question. Okay, yeah, so let's go to it, because you started Uber.
Yeah,
that's income. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so to break that down, so as I mentioned, I was probably doing UberX for a good year and a half at most. And then this was completely new industry that I was in. And as an Uber driver, you're an independent contractor essentially. So you're seen as self-employed. So although I had my PAYG job, that was helping me service the future loans. From a Uber income perspective, that secondary employment, or that income that I was earning, I wasn't able to use it towards serviceability or increasing my borrowing capacity, because as a self-employed in new industry, you need minimum 2 years generally.
Did you know this going in?
Income. I knew that going in because I asked my mortgage broker, Michael, at the time, and and then he goes, "Hey, look, it's not going to improve your borrowing capacity at all, but at the same time, what it did for me was definitely accelerate my ability to save for future properties, along with the equity that I was pulling out with each purchase, and also quick free cash flow for those renovations. Like I was getting tradie invoices on a constant basis, and I had no money to pay for it until I had next week's paycheck, and that was just becoming a repetitive cycle. And I was like, this is not going to be sustainable. I was constantly chasing my tail, so I was like, all right, I need to get into this and just find quick cash flow. So it kind of coincides together. Even though it doesn't improve my borrowing capacity, it allowed me to do those renovations, which increased my equity, which allowed me to purchase another property.
You were, but it sounds like you were on the breadline, kind of. Without that side hustle, you wouldn't have been able to afford these.
No. Yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't necessarily advise it to most, if not anyone, because like literally I was squeezing every penny until they squealed so hard. Like it was, living on a very fine line. I still look back to those days and think, how did I live off that? Like just from that living expense wise, like 50, 70, $80 a week at max. Like I was doing nothing. Like it was insane.
Your best friend was me and Goring.
Yeah, pretty much. Most meals were ate in the car in between pit stops during the Uber rides as well. But yeah, I was doing maybe like sometimes over 40 hours a week while working my my 9 to 5 job as well. So by no means it was easy or anything, but yeah, you just had to do what you got to do to.
What was driving you to do that? I mean, you were driving, but
Mm.
what was driving you to keep pushing on? Because that would have sucked.
Yeah, it did suck, but also, you know what I did? Like, so once the picture was painted a bit more clearer to me and how attainable it was, and meeting someone like Michael, where he had achieved something that I really wanted to achieve, that was very similar to myself as well, only maybe a few years older than me.
Yeah, and he was
It
still
became
doing it.
more
He was still in the process.
exactly, yeah,
Very much.
absolutely,
Mm.
inspiration, and yeah, it was really just because that was a lot more clearer and attainable. That motivated me as well, and I was like, this is how it's done. Now I just got to hit these parameters or these metrics, and Michael said I'll be able to get this next purchase. So it was really just like asking those right questions, being coachable and teachable, and just attacking that. And I've got a very like goal oriented mindset where once I've got a goal, I'll just do whatever I can to try attain
What
it.
were some of
So
those metrics you had to hit? Because I mean, I imagine I know the answer, but yeah, what did you have to hit to get to the next kind of property or goal that you wanted to hit?
yeah, those metrics, it was more so around each purchase, as I mentioned, around that between that 50 to 70K mark. That was the sweet spot.
Yep.
Obviously, continuing to earn a particular level of wage to maintain the borrowing capacity with that next lender and that next lender, because I was also in sales. So, although I did have a base income, component was commissions as well. So, I needed to also earn enough commissions on top of the base to utilize the future borrowing capacity as well. So,
Mm.
so long as I was doing my things right, then the rest would take care of itself. So,
There's a good question that's come up from Jose. How did you purchase 5 properties in 13 months? Was this done through one or multiple first and second tier lenders? And how did that all go along?
yeah,
This was
yes.
2014, 2015, I imagine.
2014, 2015, it was the year that ASIC started to come in and then put those sensitivity buffers from 1% to 3%. It was that
APRA.
period, that transition phase. Yeah, APRA, sorry. And yeah, so with it, the first couple of purchases, it was loose lending. So I was going to the tier ones. Even the third purchase, I went to tier one lending as well. The beauty about tier one lending is like, you got a lot of flexibility in terms of if you service with them, you can order multiple valuations and pick and choose of the highest valuation, access more equity here, there. But eventually you get to a point where you start maxing out with them. So then it's starting to work down the ladder from your tier twos, tier threes. Towards the end at property 6, I completely maxed out the bottom of the barrel. I was with your third tier non-conforming lenders and couldn't really go any further. So at that point, I just had to make a decision. Well, Michael said, hey, look, it's either you earn more commissions, which doesn't look like you will in this job, find a new job, which is you have no passion or interest in. You're just going to do it just to earn extra income, which I did in the past. So you can move on to that next property. Or he planted the seed in me where he said, you have so much passion, interest for it. You pester me every day about property and finance and all that. Why don't you become a broker yourself and do what I've done for you to all your friends and proposed clients as well. And he goes, I'll help you. I'll mentor you in terms of how to, go about the brokerage and
Who
what it
is this
takes to be
guy?
a broker and all that. And then, yeah, it was a blessing. It was just a blessing and so grateful for that. And yeah, we're still always in touch all the time. But I think coming back to that, having a great team around you and connecting with them is so important.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't know. How can I replicate that as a first time investor? Like what was it what was it what were the key attributes that he had that allowed you to do this besides being an awesome dude? Was it because he was in the game right now, buying property right now, building his portfolio right now, and everything was so fresh to him? Or like are there anything that we can give to people about to pick someone like that?
How to pick someone like that. Okay, so as I mentioned, when I first picked my original broker, I had no idea about the industry. Didn't really know what makes a good broker. So I went to
Yeah.
one, got me the property loan that I wanted, but didn't really have too much of a strategy. It wasn't investor focused. But when I read that article, that really resonated with me. It's about trying to find people within your team that have accomplished what you really want to accomplish and what you really want to achieve, that paved the way before you, right? Because it's all well and good if a broker's there and he's telling you what to do, but he hasn't accomplished it himself. But for someone that's got tried and tested experience, and for me, I found him through reading, online forums or like a magazine, for example, and that's how I got in touch with him. So I think it's really trying to understand, okay, what your goal is, whether it is to buy your first home, that's fine. Go to a first home by a specialist broker, or is it to build out a multiple investment property portfolio? Have they asked those questions? Are you actively investing? What's your background with property investing? And they might sound intrusive, but someone that's actually gone through the dirt will be happy to share what they've achieved. So
And
yeah,
and I think
yeah, that's very true, because you don't want to you don't want to ask personal questions, but when people deal with money all day, they're open to comfort. They're not
absolutely
questions for them. It's an everyday thing.
Exactly.
Sorry,
as
Jeff,
well, like how many investors or how many sort of people have they helped to do what you're looking to do? Like, have they are they on the journey themselves, which I think is great, but if they're just kind of learning along the way themselves, have they helped like 10, 15, 100 other people do the similar thing? And how similar are those people to your situation? Because if those people are earning 400K and you're only earning 100K, then they're not similar to you. So sort of understanding the type of people that they help, and whether that be an accountant, buyer's agent, broker, whoever it is. I think this is an interesting question. This popped up from a couple of people, and this will probably dovetail into some of the further purchases. I want to talk about those. I think a lot of them are in Queensland. Spoiler alert. But what type of properties? Like, what did number 2 look like, and what are these?
So,
are these sort of
houses, units, townhouses, unit.
They're all houses. So just sticking back to fundamentals in terms of, good quality, good areas with good located land, not necessarily in the nicest of suburbs, like blue chip suburbs, but they were in like your blue collar areas, those areas going through gentrification. That second property that was in Deception Bay. At the time, that was like, still to this day, they call it Depression Bay. It's, you can be seen as rough as, but any good area that has access to amenities, transport, always just going back to those fundamentals, they'll have their time in the sun. And those areas, they always have value at some level. Okay. And like, you look at just those Mount Druids, for example, and they've just performed just as good as some of your blue chip suburbs in Sydney over a period of time. So it's also trying to cut out that negative noise as well, and then really do your research. And then, if you have belief and trust in it, then go pursue it. But in terms of the property portfolio, similar to your Deception Bay, Kalanga, in the Redcliffe area, Morningside, I bought in Logan before as well, sold that, which was a mistake, which I learned a lot from as well.
Why'd you sell? Wasn't going anywhere.
This was an inexperienced investor's mindset where after I bought it, maybe within 3 or 4 years, I think I was like, this property shit's not doing anything.
That's a long time, though.
But you know what? Pretty much a year after I sold it, it just went through the roof, that area. And I think most areas went through the roof because of the COVID and leading up to COVID, I think it was. And then, so it was a shame because I didn't see any sort of gain on it. I just covered my entry and exit costs. But be patient in this game, because I was getting a bit antsy about what's my next move going to be. And then, decided to sell when I probably shouldn't have, because I didn't really have any sort of dying need to sell, or another venture that I was looking into at the time.
So you didn't even transition those funds into a different investment?
No, not really. So
no.
it's just a silly move on my behalf. And to be honest, Michael still
learning.
Pokes me every day about, not every day, but all the time about it.
We've all done so. I'm sure we should get him on. I have to get him, and I want to ask him. I want to poke his bear as well. I'm sure, because I remember a similar, not to make this about me, but the kind of another telltale sign when you're speaking to a professional is if they're really, really passionate. Like, passion is one thing; it's not the only thing. But he was really like, no, he wasn't yelling at me on the phone, but he was saying, "Look, mate, if you can't do interest only lending, if you can't handle that responsibility, you're not going to be a good property investor." Like because I said, oh, look, what about like, there's too much money in my offset if I spend it. He's like, well, you have to focus on that discipline. Like, and I remember that conversation. This was probably 2014 because I was having that. And this was on a Saturday morning or whenever it was. And he was taking time out of his to sort of help, similar to yourself, I imagine. And those are the kind of people, but no, that's the kind of stuff that's the kind of person.
Point. So it's a bloody great point. Another thing that I think is we haven't kind of touched on is choose your professionals for what they are. Don't expect one professional to be your everything. So one of the mistakes that I made was relying on a mortgage. I didn't take their advice, but I thought a mortgage broker was the be all and end all. I don't need an accountant. I don't need a buyer's agent. I'm just going to rely on my mortgage broker. But I see it all the time. People like chatting to their mortgage broker and they're excitable and they're like, great, go buy in this area because this is going to do really well. The mortgage broker, that first mortgage broker that I went to, he was like, buy in some mining town. And I was like, that doesn't, I mean, I'm reading these magazines and they're not telling me to buy in mining towns. Why are you saying this? He's like, oh, I've got a friend here that'll get a commission and blah, blah. Well, he didn't tell me they were going to get a commission, but he was getting a commission. So like the way I like to think about it is this is your financial future. Just saying you are the driver in this vehicle no matter what. So that is what's going to happen. No one's going to care about your money as much as you. As much as I care about my customers, as much as Taku cares about his, you have to take control, but you have experts that are guiding you. When you go off onto the mortgage broker road, you listen to your mortgage broker when you're going down that path. When it starts to go on the buying side, you listen to your buyer's agent. When it starts to talk about trusts, clients come to me and they're like, hey, Joe, should I get a trust? I'm like, that's well above. I'm an expert at find, negotiate, secure. They're experts about trust structuring. And then it's like, okay, great. Well, you've spoken to your accountant about trust. What about the lawyer? Speak to your lawyer about trust. And how does that work? And then it's good to have your multiple team members all speaking together as well, because what an accountant wants for a trust and what a lawyer wants for a trust are two very different things. And what a broker ultimately wants from that trust is completely different. And when I have a chat with people about investing in property, the broker always wants the best cash return. Well, not always, but is a lot of cash return because that's what's going to help some serviceability. But it's like if you drop a little bit of cash return, you can get a better growth. So you've got to kind of be balancing all of these things with your team and throwing the ball to each other and saying like, okay, great. Well, what is the best thing for this person? But ultimately it's your decision. You're driving that vehicle. You're just taking advice when you go on the different paths. Yeah. There wasn't really a question in that, but I saw a really good question that came up.
Was that from Rich?
Yeah, as you flip and sell your properties, how does tax come into?
Sorry, mate.
Huh? Oh, is it?
That's from last week.
Well, no, I mean that might be a good question to be fair. Like, because you sold this property, do you think? Do you buy?
I mean, yeah. With that wasn't really a flip and sell because I didn't go into it originally thinking I'm going to buy and spruce it up and then flip for a profit. In this scenario, when I did sell, it was kind of a bit more longer term later thereafter, and I didn't make any money on it anyway, so there wasn't any sort of capital gains tax or anything like that I had to factor in. But these properties, I think the second part of the question was how did you purchase these properties? I purchased those in my name as well. So moving forward, depending on what type of project it might be or a purchase, I may look at other avenues in terms of the trust structures and things of that nature, depending on what sort of benefits that they might have from a tax perspective and borrowing capacity perspective and those sort of things. But yeah, when I originally purchased, they're all just in my name.
Yeah.
That's it. I wanted to bring this question up. This is a really, it's one of those pointed sort of, I mean, it's not an uncomfortable question because we've sort of okay with us. If Rich says, how has the property game changed post-COVID? I mean, post-COVID, surely some of the things you did are no longer able to be done. Prices have doubled and income has barely risen. I don't know about barely, but I mean, it's gone up. Depends on what industry. But how has the team changed? What's relevant now was the end of that kind of question. Didn't fit the character limit. But it's an interesting one. Some of the things are no longer able to be done. I mean, you probably can't sort of do that sort of as quickly as you did, or maybe you can. What are your thoughts on that one, Taku?
It can definitely be done if you're finding the right properties and you have that strategy of improving, let's say, the increasing the value of the property through by means of renovations or something. What might change is the type of lenders that you're using. So right now, what we're seeing, as I mentioned, the first 3 properties I believe were on my income at the time, which wasn't that great either, was still through tier 1 lenders. But now, if I was on that similar sort of income, I'd be maxed out with maybe a 1 tier 1 lender, and then I'd have to start working down the ladder. But there's still other lenders out there. Now, what a lot of people might get, a bit cautious of is, yes, they come at it with a much higher rate, but you can still get the borrowing if you wanted to. Obviously, depending on the scenario, but there are still lenders out there and options out there to be able to grow a portfolio. And they're just short-term solutions, I always say as well. So, once your financial position may improve or borrowing capacity, lending policies improves or rates decrease and borrowing capacity frees up, we can move you back over to maybe a lower rate lender or a tier 1 lender or whatever it is that's going to put you in a better position. But it can definitely be done. Like a lot of our clients, they're not on crazy high incomes either, but they're still building out a property portfolio using multiple lenders.
Yeah, it's kind of the multi-lender strategy. They sort of talk about it when you can potentially sort of take the equity from the hardest lender and then sort of move to a lender that may have different policy that's more investment friendly, which carries risk, and you are accepting that risk. So you shouldn't just go and do it tomorrow. Like, really think about it and think that, and you need to take that seriously. You can't just sort of but it is potential there to do it.
Yeah, like in the last 2 years, especially as 2.5 years, as rates have started to increase, we've probably brought on maybe 4 or 5 new lenders on our panel that we never used before. But that's because we had to start to get a little bit more creative with which lenders we were using to continue that journey down, like if the clients wanted to. But it's just the logo of the bank changes, maybe a few extra increases in the rate. But
I'll throw a bit of a curveball. I know Joe wants to ask a question, but I want to throw a curveball. That first Mac kind of situation the other day, like with that, is that sort of
what the hacking? So what's the situation? What happened?
Well, I think it's just a security, but it was a security sort of cyber hack, wasn't it? I mean, is that a big concern, or that can happen with that happened with Optus last year.
Yeah,
so it can happen.
That's happening more and more recently as well, especially like with that first Max cyber hack. I think a lot of brokers, they might have back-end staff, offshore staff. I've got offshore staff as well, and back of house staff as well. They're all using that one login to access the portal, and someone has a bit of malware or whatnot. There's a lot more avenues for it to get affected. But I think the banks will tighten up pretty quick smart on these sort of things, but hopefully it's a less rare and rarer occurrence.
Was it a broker problem or a bank problem?
I'm not too sure. I only just heard about it actually today. It was quite recent, right?
Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I just saw it. I just saw it yesterday, so I don't really have too many of the details. But I definitely, like, I've used, I don't know, I feel like they call them third tier lenders, but I think it's just called bottom of the barrel. You just trying to scrape by, because I've had some horrendous experiences with third tier lenders that they get you in at an incredibly high interest rate, and then they just jack it up, and then they have terrible support. But you know what? I used it because I needed the money, and it was the available money to allow me to push myself forward and move myself forward. And if I couldn't handle the interest rate raises, then that's where you're going to get stuck. So you need to make sure that you do your numbers and make sure that your numbers stack up to allow you to say, you know what? Yeah, I will use this. The reason why CBA isn't taking me is because they have large buffers that APRA has imposed on them to say, well, if this person's, not having 3% serviceability on top of their rate, we can't take them on. So that tells you something. Like, if first tier bank isn't going to take you, maybe have some backup. But if you're more risk averse and you're ready to make it happen and push forward, and you want to make your portfolio grow rapidly, then you don't have a choice but to use second and third tier lenders.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately the decision's up to you. There's an option there. If you want to take that risk, go for it. But
this is actually a great question. Dave asks,
caution. So,
do you think brokers are a little conservative?
I mean, it depends what type of broker that you have. Some definitely could be a lot more conservative than others. I guess someone that might have utilized these type of, third tier lenders where you're really trying to stretch your borrowing capacity in the past and have had success with it from their own perspective as well, from their personal journey, might be a bit more lenient and favorable with using those banks because they know they do serve a purpose. And if there's a goal that needs to be achieved, then we'll utilize them a lot at the moment. We're utilizing a lot of those lenders. Yeah. So I guess it's how long's a piece of string with that.
The thing I would sort of comment on that is, and having been in that game a little bit, what you see a lot of, or you see some of, I won't say a lot, you see brokers use the same 4 to 6 to 8 lenders because they're comfortable. They know the policy and they know the business development manager, the BDMs. So it's that kind of comfort safety blanket. And the moment that they don't fit those policies, so rather than being, I suppose, conservative, it's more about, well, how much is the broker educating and pushing themselves to say, okay, I don't have a solution to those 8 lenders. Who else? If I need to find a solution, who is that solution? Whereas some will just throw their hands up and say, sorry, I can't do it. We can't do it. That's what I've sort of seen out there. It's like, well, there is a solution somewhere. It's just what is the cost and what is the risk attached to that solution? That's what I would sort of find. And then how are they presenting that to their client? Is it okay, this lender is going to go bankrupt tomorrow? Is it, okay, this is a band-aid solution? Or
the lender's not going to go bankrupt, It's not.
Well, no, but some brokers do have that kind of mindset. I wanted to ask this one. Because this is interesting, because we sort of have some people out there still starting their journey and they may not just sort of know, they may not have even spoken to a broker. So Brendan asks, I'm a homeowner and would love to buy my first investment property. Can you explain using super and equity in my present home? I mean, they're two separate things, but super would be SMSF, I suppose.
Well, I think it's good to get that clear as well as he's asking one question, he's asking two questions, but put them together. So can you break that down? If someone asked you that question, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, separately, you can do both things if they're on separate, on their own accord. SMSF, you got enough funds in there, but to take out super, and to purchase an investment property in your own name, not under the SMSF banner, it's not possible. You can't take super out to purchase an investment property or even your own home, unless you've got one of those, first home super saver schemes to buy your first home using super. But this wouldn't be possible in that situation. Obviously, if there's equity in your present home, we can assess it to see what the equity position is there, and is that enough in terms of being able to access that equity borrowing capacity wise and purchase another property.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like self-managed super funds is a 65-year-old you, and that's when you're going to get access to it. And that, like, it is a completely, just think of it as a separate company over here. It has nothing to do with your borrowing ability now and your income and equity now. It's all about your future self. So that's what you've got in your cash and equity here is what you're dealing with now. Eventually, when your super is big enough, then you can create a self-managed super fund and then buy property in it. That's further down. It might be now for you, but it's just two completely different things. So how do you explain equity? Like, let's just break this down, because I think we talk very high level because we've done these things before. But how does this work? Let's just say this guy's bought his PPOR. He bought it for $500,000. It's now worth $800,000. What does he do if he wants to start his investment journey today?
Okay, so equity would be the difference. Just the gross equity would just generally be the difference between the value of the property minus the debt or the liability that you hold on it. So from, what was it, 800 to 500? Did you say? So 800 being the value and 500 being the loan or the mortgage amount. The gross equity is 300K. But the bank, they're not going to let you borrow up to or take out 100% of that equity, because that would take you to the 100% value of that property. There always needs to be a little bit of fat there. So usually most banks will allow you to take up to 80, some even up to 90, inclusive of LMI. But if we broke that down in terms of accessible equity to be able to utilize for a future purchase, let's say we're going up to 80% of the value of the property. So on 800K, 80% of equity on that property. So you're looking at, what's that, 640K. right? So we can access the difference between 640K, which is 80% value of the 800K, plus 500K, which is your existing mortgage. So we can access 140K of equity there to use for future investments.
Pending borrowing capacity, I suppose.
Yes.
I don't know whether
Yeah,
Pending
pending
also
borrowing capacity,
theory.
of course. Yeah, yeah.
I just threw a little example in the comments there that one that I've used before. There's a usable equity calculator, but it's just yeah. So what would that mean? So now all of a sudden, if you have that, like, good on you for doing quick maths. We don't do math on this show, so well done to be
I hope
able
I
to
got
do
those
that.
numbers right.
Yeah.
Sound about right.
I got my calculator right there. I probably should have used it. But,
Yeah. But okay, cool. Now we have $140,000 of usable equity. Let's just assume we've got the serviceability. What do we do then?
So then from that point on, that equity, that can be used not just for the deposit, but for the cost of purchasing the property. So that could involve stamp duty, legals, buyer's agent fees, whatever it is to acquire that property, that can be used towards that future property. So with that 140K, your broker or bank, they should be able to determine how to leverage that equity to get into what type of value of property. So let's say on a 600K purchase, if you're not using a buyer's agent, 20% deposit, it's going to be 120K, probably stamp duty, maybe 25K on that. So almost you can get about approximately a 600K purchase at 80% LVR using that 140K, maybe chuck in a few extra, bit of extra cash. But essentially that would be equate to those numbers.
So you could potentially buy a $600,000 property without dipping into your own pocket outside of that equity. One thing to remember, though, I think that's very important is, yes, you're going to be taking a 20% deposit. You could even do, a 10% or a 12% deposit. Just remember that there's going to be debt on that money. So you've had this money locked away in your bank, in your property for the past however many years. When you take that out, you're going to be charged a higher interest rate on your original loan. So just be prepared for that, because that's going to...
Well, not necessarily the interest rate. It's just it's going to cost you more money, because the interest rate shouldn't have been...
You're correct. You're right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
just
mate.
your repayments will increase. So you're essentially for that purchase borrowing 100% of the value of the property. So you've got to factor in those numbers when you're doing your cash flow analysis, not just on 80% of the new loan, but 100%, which includes the equity that you just...
One of the things that floats around is, save 20% deposit. But the problem is the market's moving quickly. Like, there are markets that I'm buying in. It's May now. What is it? Is it May now? Yeah, it's May now.
First of May,
they've already grown 10-15% since January. So I can't save up fast enough to get a 20% deposit. So can you talk to us about 20% deposits, 10% deposits, and 12% deposits, and how that kind of works?
Yeah, for sure. So 20% deposit, it's not much complexity to it, or no real additional cost when purchasing the property. You get that 80% loan from the bank, 20% deposit if you got the costs and everything sorted out. Where it becomes slightly different in terms of the cost and outlay towards purchasing an investment property is above that 80%. So generally most banks above 80% when you're buying an investment property or just an owner occupier or whatever, they'll come with it at a penalty. So with that penalty, there'll be lender's mortgage insurance. So that's insurance not to protect you like most insurances are, but it's more so to protect the bank. Obviously, they're taking high risk, so you have the liberty to pay the insurance on the bank's behalf in the event that you ever default or go belly up on that loan. That's usually, if you're going up to 90% of the value of the property in terms of the lend that you're getting, it's usually going to approximate to about 1.5-2% of the value of the property, the lender's mortgage insurance that that's capped on top of the loan as an additional cost. But hey, look,
1.5%. So that's $9,000
on what was that?
600,000. Sorry,
600,000. Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it allows you to leverage into that property, like rather than saving an additional, additional 10%, so 60K, like you said, if that market's moving, by the time you save that 60K, then that property's already increased in value by probably 150K. So you'd just be chasing your tail. So you can work leveraging to your own, benefit. And it's one of those necessary evils, I guess, where you can really use it to your advantage as well.
Yeah, the way I think about lender's mortgage insurance, because you go 10%, is embrace it when you have to, avoid it if you need, avoid it if you can, embrace it when you have to, because it's going to get you into a property faster than you can save. So just pay the $9,000. It's also cash that's not coming out of your pocket that you have to pay. It's bundled on top of the loan. You're going to pay it off over years.
You are paying for more interest on over the life of the loan, though.
You're paying 9% more, obviously. Yeah. Disclaimer.
So it's not all gravy, people. I want to be the voice of reason. But I actually want to learn more about, because we sort of skated over some of those properties. We sort of said you bought all those properties. What was the sort of, how did the journey evolve? So number one, you literally flew into town after doing some research. You bought that and sort of signed the contract just as you were about to hop on the plane. Number two, you then picked up in Deception Bay. How was that sort of give us a quick sort of cliff note, and then we'll sort of, should we go throw our sort of sponsor first and then? Yeah.
There's nothing worse than going into a situation unprepared, especially when that situation is purchasing one of the most expensive assets of your life against a trained property expert in the form of a real estate agent. It's a scary thought, but it is a skill that can be taught. Do you want to learn how to become fully prepared when buying a property so you can get out there, buy your dream home or investment property without the fear of actually messing it up? Scott Agate, the founder and expert property negotiator at Hello House, has been helping people buy their properties by stepping in and negotiating with the agents and saving his clients tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. Scott has now decided to share all that he's learned over the past 28 years in real estate, so you can go out there and do the exact same thing on how to find a property, analyze that property, negotiate on that property, and transact on it to get the best results. He's created the Get Buyer Ready course, which is a step-by-step guide on how you too can become an expert property negotiator. It's the easy way of how you can avoid all of these agent games and get the best purchase price on that dream home or your investment property. The course is in short bites for busy people with no fluff at all. Just all the information you need to get buyer ready and secure that next property with confidence at the best price. Scott has been kind enough to give our community a massive discount with the link below. Sign up today before you even think about putting an offer on that next property, and it will be one of the best decisions you ever make.
Love it. Okay, so yeah, how did the story evolve? You were like, screw it. Michael Zara's buying up all of Logan. I'm going to go to the north suburbs. I'm going to buy up all of Moreton Bay.
Yeah.
I think that your decision's probably worked out better, to be honest.
Well,
Michael's done all right. He's done pretty well.
I think he's done definitely.
He's not upset. He's not crying himself to sleep.
Very all right.
But how did it kind of evolve, and how did things change on the investing journey?
Yeah, so with that, more of a clearer strategy in terms of what my next purchasing decision should look like, and really focusing on my limiting factor being the equity or the cash to move on to the next one, was really looking at, firstly, the purchase price point had to be under 300K for that property. So I was limited to some of the areas, hence Deception Bay. Also had to meet minimum 6% yield as well to cover my holding costs as well. Back then, Deception Bay was quite easy to find that. It wasn't an unusual thing. And then also something with less, ideally I wanted less than 10K, but that budget blew out a little bit in terms of the renos. But really using that 10K renos to improve the value by 50 to 60K. Because that's what I really needed to move on to the next one.
How did you do? What did you do to increase using 10K?
Oh, to be honest, it wasn't even anything groundbreaking. This was a property. It actually had such nice character to it, but it just didn't have any. It just lacked 10 to 11K from, the existing landlord. It had been on the market actually for about 6 weeks, maybe even longer, and. Yeah, and then I was negotiating with that agent. I had no one actually go view the property for me. And I knew it needed quite a bit of work as well in terms from a cosmetic point of view. So, and I didn't know I could use a property manager to go view it for me from my existing property, because I didn't think that was a thing. So I went on Airtasker and then looked for a handyman to go view the property for me and just quote me on what needs to be done. And then from that, his quote came in at like 8K. So it was lower, but then, as you start doing these renos, always budgets always go above. But that one in particular was a 3-bedder that I bought. There was one big room, was the main bedroom, and he suggested cutting it right down the middle, just putting a wall through it, a non-structural wall, but each side would still have a window. It would still meet the parameters in terms of being able to call it a second bedroom. On title, it wasn't listed as a 3-bedder still because I hadn't, put it through council or anything. But as I mentioned, that actually improved the rent by about $80. That increased the value a lot quicker as well. When we ordered multiple valuations on that, most of them came back as 3-bedder, as originally purchased. They just said, hey, you put a wall in and you can't just call it a 4-bedroom because of that, even though it did meet the parameters. So the valuation didn't increase that significantly with those bank valuations. But there was one bank that did value it as a 4-bedder. And then that's how we really got it to increase the value by that much generally, and also increase the rent by $80.
Yeah, so, the little tip there is to call up RP data, the people that the banks use for a lot of this data, and say, hey guys, here are the photos. This property is a 4-bedder. And then get them to update their data, and they're like, oh yeah, thanks for the update. Have a good day. And then when the banks look at RP data, they're like, oh yeah, shit, it is a 4-bedder. So that's a little, obviously not financial advice, but do your own
data
calling. Worried about the advice. I'm just worried about if they'll cotton onto it and cut off that, they'll figure out that people are doing that.
That's true. Okay. Yeah, let's just make sure we're not live for this section. We'll just delete this, just cut this bit out.
So that was an amazing sort of well done with sort of picking, and you picked a sort of listing that had gone quite stale. So the vendor was quite conditioned by that stage. I imagine it wasn't a super hot market, Brisbane in 2015. I think
no, it wasn't.
Maybe 2014. It was just kind of tracking along, doing what it was doing. So then number 2 helped you to go to number 3. What did number 3 look like?
Number 3 was that was Kalanga, I believe. Yeah, from memory, it was Deception Bay. Yeah, then Kalanga. So I was sticking to that Moreton Bay region. Was slightly a little bit closer in. Price point was slightly a little bit higher, being closer to access to North Lakes, and the CBD was closer than Deception Bay. Didn't have that stigma about it. That one also used the same actual tradie that I found on Airtasker. Now I was starting to develop a bit more of a team. Also used the property manager that I got from Deception Bay now to start taking photos for me. It was a win-win for everyone. They pick up the work on the renos, and then the property manager picks up the listing. But that's where I slowly started to create a team. And through that first reno, I was starting to get a bit more of an eye on, how much things might cost. Make sure you cover your overruns. And then also creating a team and relying a lot on them while I was in Sydney to improve the value of that property. Yeah.
Were you using property managers as well to help you to manage the trades to get there and all that sort of stuff?
No, I actually wasn't. So the trade so they picked up the key off the property manager, but during the renovation period, they just held on to the key, and I just had direct contact with the trades. And then the property manager, they were the ones doing the initial inspection to do all the photos and all that and send it to me before I purchased. So that's when you really start to realize how much a team is so critical in terms of building out a portfolio. Yeah.
But I also love that when you say team, you just mean a bloke you met on Airtasker, your property manager. Like it's not too. This was one of the posts I made the other day. Is like property. It has the most amount of like dumb people, and I didn't mean it as an offensive term. It's just like property is so easy to like, not, I want to say easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, but there are so many people that have made ridiculous amounts of money by just taking action and making stuff happen and building the team of your core people, and then just making it work. One of the questions I have is around diversification. So why did you decide to go so hard in like Moreton Bay, like you're within, all your properties are within 20 Ks of each other, or like maybe even 15 Ks of each other. Why focus on that rather than go out to Perth, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales?
Yeah. So with the amount of research that I was doing, and, you know, the more I got to know the area, the more I got to know, you know, it started to develop a team, the more I got sold on the area as well. And, you know, the future prospects of that area. So I was like so sold that area was going to take off by doing the research and what the future held for that specific area. I understand the idea of diversification, but it's also the idea around, you know, being a master, you know, of one, and rather than being the jack of all trades, and, you know, being, you know, just investing just for the sake of diversifying, just becoming an expert in one area. And really identifying the little, you know, the nuances within each suburb, or the particular hotspots, the no-go spots, and all those areas. I think that really helped as well. So,
and did you sort of find you started to get to know the pockets better than even some of the agents? You sort of started to say, you'd get a deal, like you'd call up an agent and say, hey, look, I'm looking for a property at this price point. Like, what do you got coming up? And they'd say, oh, I got X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, not that one. No, that one sounds good. Let's go and have a look at that one. We'll see what's the sort of story with that one. And then you sort of start to realize, crap, actually, this agent might not sort of understand what they've got on their hands. I can potentially pick that property up at a bit of a under comparable. Is that what you're sort of finding as well?
Yeah, absolutely you do, because you start to get you become almost like an area expert in that area, like you've grown up there with the amount of research that you do. Because like then, you know, okay, this pocket's a no-go zone, whereas a regular investor that wasn't really attuned with that specific area might not know it's just flooded with housing commissions, or that's the pocket, you know, where, you know, that's where the power station or the tip yard is, or something like that, right? So these are things that you start to pick up when you're looking at that market on a day-to-day basis.
What was your
sort of
favorite
research
deal?
tools?
Oh,
sorry.
no.
I was going to say, what sort of, apart from using your phone, what research tools were you using?
It's a lot of research tools. So as I mentioned, from a data perspective, was using things like, back then I was using things like SQM research for vacancy rates and those sort of things. I'm using even like the Heron Todd White property clock. I was using my broker's access to Price Finder. I was using CoreLogic, was using On the House, like all these various websites. This was before I had access, like any sort of, you know, property online courses and things like that as well. There wasn't many out there, or anything. So yeah, and also the qualitative research was really impactful. So speaking to a lot more experienced investors, or investors that have invested in areas that I was looking to gain their knowledge, that was through meetups, through online forums such as your property chat. That's where I met so many other investors on there as well. And just that's why I started the property meetup as well, so I can get a bunch of investors together at the time, and we can share stories.
Yeah, it's amazing how much that helps. I mean, just this conversation now has been so, like, you've been building upon and getting value at each step of the way.
Yeah.
What was your favorite deal? What was the deal that you're like, yeah, man, I'm so happy with that one. That was a cracker.
Yeah, my favorite deal was my last purchase that I made. So this, I wasn't even ready to make a purchase, to be honest. I didn't know what my borrowing capacity was. I didn't have a pre-approval ready, didn't know which lender I could borrow through. And this was obviously last purchase, getting towards the end of the barrel, bottom of the barrel type thing. This property came up that was actually listed, and it was for auction that day. Okay, so I got a call from an agent that I had been close with, and he goes, look, mate, no one's going to be bidding on this property. And you hear the same spiel all the time, like, yeah, whatever. But then you realize when you turn up, there's like 20 people that's, put up a bid on there. But this one, it was actually legit. And then I asked Michael to run some numbers for me really quickly. to see if I could make a purchase. I didn't even have enough funds to complete the purchase at the time, so it was. He goes over the next, like, get an extended settlement, and then just hit the Uber hard to make enough to make the remaining gap that you have for the purchase. And I was like, done. and then with that, so long as I hit those numbers, I can get that property. And I was the only one that bid. It was in Scarborough. It was 2 streets off the back of the water. Primo location. And to be honest, it was renting horribly. It was a shack. It was like a 2-bedroom shack. And even it wasn't renting horribly at the time, but I ended up getting it for $300K, probably worth at the time close to 400, 450, like easily if I just put it on the market. But why I like that purchase is on my most recent purchase that I made. So I closed that deal anyway.
Nice.
300K renting wasn't renting that great from a cash flow perspective, wasn't that great, but just the amount of equity that was in there and the future potential to potentially build on there as well was there, because it was such a good location. But funnily enough, circling back to now my most recent purchase that I made, which was last year. So I got a door knock from an agent at the Scarborough property, and then I got a door knock or a call on the phone saying, "Hey, the guy next door to you wants to buy your property. Are you willing to sell?" And I was like, not looking to sell at all, but I'll entertain some offers. What he was offering was not near what I wanted for that property or willing to sell. So we just left it. And then after about 6 weeks, the agent calls me back and goes, "Hey, look, the owner, if he can't buy it off you, he's happy to sell his property to you." Yeah. And then, so then that means I had 2 blocks side by side, which were both just absolute dumps. They were just a fibro shack, 2-bedder. And we were able to make a deal happen. So now I've got the 2 properties side by side, which now I can build 3 on, which is the plan for later in the year.
How much land size?
It's just over 800, so close to 900
combined.
Yeah.
Wow, that's unreal. You're playing Monopoly in real life. You're getting 2 hotels. You've got the 2 slots. Now you're going to put some houses and hotels on it.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not the ideal time to build, but look, it was an opportunity that just presented itself, and I was in a position to be able to do it. So,
did you pay more for that house because you owned it, or like was it just an amazing deal that it worked out quite nicely?
Yeah. So, wait, did I pay more for which house?
Sorry, for the one next door. Like, did you pay more for it because it's worth more to you? Like that deal, because you can put 3 on it. Anybody else could only put 1 on it. So to you, it's actually worth 50, 60, 100 grand more. So did you pay more for it, or did you get it for an amazing bargain steal of a deal?
I wouldn't say it was amazing bargain steal of a deal. I still paid market price. I don't think I paid overs for it. But the potential of it outweighed, just getting it for a steal. I was like, hey, look, if I can, I ended up paying just over 600 for it. So double what I bought the Scarborough original one for, but still in this market, you could even offload it above that. And then if I can build 3 on it, then it's
600 Scarborough's great. Unreal.
So it sounds like what are your thoughts? What's next? So I think next is building potentially those things. But have you thought about looking in? There are other states in Australia, Taku. Have you thought about Victoria? Have you thought about? I mean, South Australia is probably a little bit off the boil, mate. Not off the boil, but it's gone crazy, and WA is still going a little bit crazy. But what are your thoughts about other states and looking in those?
I bought one in Perth. The previous year, or maybe just a bit before I bought the Scarborough one as well. Yeah. So that when I say Perth, it was Port Kennedy. This was
That's still 18, I mean, some people argue that's not Perth, but it's close. Yeah. It's still driving. It's like saying, bloody, you can get out. Yeah, you can. There's parts of Sydney that are further out, but go on, Port Kennedy.
But my biggest regret, I would say, is not buying more in Perth when I had the opportunity to. Just the way that I see that market going, and it is what it is. Hindsight's 2020, but that wasn't a renovation project or anything like that. Like, that's not what I was really focusing on. So it was just low maintenance, send, forget. And mind you, I used a buyer's agent for that. So at the time, like I was very busy with work and I had a lot more return on investment, servicing our clients and building the business and focusing my energy and time on that. So I relied, and I've used buyer's agents as well for another property as well. So yeah, I'll utilize their services all the time for that type of thing. And especially in markets like Perth or, hot areas of Brisbane, it's like relying on their expertise and contacts to be able to source that property for you is going to be worth your weight in gold. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's super interesting. Yeah, Paul Kennedy has absolutely gone on a tear in the past 2 years, so that would have done incredibly well. There is
remember we did that live on Perth when you went over there, Joe. We did that cooling up in Rockingham, mate.
Man, cooling up now is just stupid
unearthed.
money.
I was seeing stuff at 3:30 then, but anyway, I don't know if you want to answer this one, so feel free to throw it through the keeper. But like, how many kind of properties are you sort of looking, or just answer what was the goal even as well? Like, what is your goal from?
Well, what is the goal now? What was the goal, and now what is the goal?
It's funny. So it was like, so I'm at 8 properties at the moment. So I've bought, I've sold, I've bought again, and at 8 at the moment. And then with the future prospects of building. In terms of the goal, it was actually only recently where I was so goal focused and but that needle kept moving and moving and moving. Right now, my goal is continuing to accumulate more properties, generating more passive income. I don't have a clear number in mind, but I do have a lifestyle goal in terms of what sort of lifestyle I want to live, what sort of freedom I want to have with my time. And that's essentially going to be, until I get to that and until I have that type of lifestyle, I'll continue to keep accumulating so long as I have the means and the financial, capacity to be able to do that. But yeah, as a clear number of properties or a number of passive income goal, it's a moving needle, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the right answer, because you're not you in 10 years time.
Yeah.
But you're setting yourself up to make yourself very comfortable into the future. So for me, goal setting is like, look, I just need to be crystal clear on what this next property needs to be. And then kind of see the outline of the next one. And the next one after that gets blurrier and blurrier, and everything that's further out gets a little bit hazy. As long as you see the shining light of what you want and it's motivating you to push forward, it doesn't really matter. The most important one is the next one, and that needs to be fundamentally crystal clear. For some people, that's the wrong answer. For some people, it's like, no. What is this one and this one and this one and this one and that return is going to give me this? That's cool. That's great if that's your kind of spreadsheet goal and how you see things. But it's super interesting that you're not like you. Yeah, it sounds like you've got your ultimate goal, your number, your lifestyle goal, and how you get there is, I know I'm going to get there because I'm going to keep pushing the envelope. Like, is that how you kind of think about it?
Yeah, because in the beginning, when I first started investing in property, I had a number of properties in mind of how many I wanted to buy.
Right.
But then I slowly realized as you start to accumulate those properties, then it's not really the number of properties, but you realize it's more so the lifestyle and the type of freedom that you get with that, holding that investment property portfolio. So that's why I don't really have a crystal clear number in mind in terms of properties or passive income, but it's more so creating that lifestyle that I want. So yeah, I haven't even really thought about in terms of what sort of passive income or any sort of numbers at all anymore.
Yeah, we had a great live session with Richard Morgan and a couple of weeks ago, and he's a broker. He's in his 40s, I think, and he's done incredibly well. And the big takeaway I took from his session was, you can because this is one of the questions that's come up. Brian asks, will you look at commercial in the future? If not, why not? But it's talking about like positive cash flow. He said, like, but this is what Brian was saying, is like, you can always convert, like it takes a year to convert all your capital into cash flow. So why not focus on capital growth and growing that nest egg as big as possible? Because you can't turn cash flow into capital growth, but you can turn capital growth into cash flow. That's maybe not the best advice for everyone, but that's kind of what stuck with me. So what are your thoughts on what Brian's saying here? Are you thinking about commercial? Are you thinking about residential? Like, what are your thoughts for these going forward?
Yeah. Definitely, it's in the pipeline of commercial. Where with commercial, ideally, when I get into that space, I'd like to look at something with slightly larger asset in terms of multiple revenue streams from that commercial asset that I hold. So rather than just buying maybe, you know, one warehouse shop with
shed,
one
yeah.
shared facility with one income stream, I want to have enough ability to be able to purchase something like a business park, for example, where it's got multiple investment streams coming from it to reduce your risk and, you know, alleviate those longer vacancy terms and things like that. That comes with commercial. Obviously, that comes with a large deposit and things of that nature. So, yeah, slowly making my way there, and diversifying into looking at other type of property assets. So, hence why I'm starting the build with the three, and then trying to really increase my equity position to eventually get into commercial.
So this is more of like relevant to your role as a mortgage broker right now. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with lending at the moment, and what are the baller clients doing to beat it? So what are some of the things that you're seeing the more advanced, sophisticated, smart property investors doing to overcome some of the challenges that they're faced with?
Some of the generally the challenges at the moment are around borrowing capacity. Most people, they're going to get hit with borrowing capacity even after utilizing multiple lenders.
Yeah.
I guess some of the things that the bowler clients are doing is to increase borrowing capacity. We might need to look at purchasing properties outright, for example, to increase so you don't hold additional debt, for example, but then you're increasing it by way of improving your rental return and rental total income that you're receiving. And then that might help with increasing your borrowing capacity as well.
Doesn't that then counteract the whole one of the purposes of one of the main advantages of property? Is it leverage?
It is leverage, but to overcome that challenge, it's also really understanding what's your limiting resource. So if it is borrowing capacity, and then if they do, for example, have good cash buffers there and enough to purchase something outright. Now, I don't obviously present that to everyone, but if they do, then that's a way to increase your borrowing capacity, for example. But that's not just buying any sort of asset just to increase borrowing capacity. You still want to focus on the fundamentals with each purchase, but that could be a way to improve borrowing capacity if there were bowler clients. So purchasing in trusts as well. Some banks might ignore trust debts, not all of them, only a small handful. So that could be a way to also slowly not diminish your borrowing capacity as fast as well. Eventually, you will still come to a point where you are going to, have those issues with borrowing capacity, but there are some ways to, reduce that, incremental decreases. So.
And the way to do that is to increase your rental income, right? To increase your income. So maybe spending some of that equity to create a better cash flow outcome, right? Like it's creating more it's creating more cash return. So can you take it from a 3-bed to a 4-bed and get another $80 a week in rent? Because $80 a week times by 52 is a lot of money. And then that boosts your serviceability and helps you with things.
Granny flats, all of those things. So
granny flats, another great example. I've got too much cash, I've got too much equity, but I don't have the serviceability. We'll spend 200 grand on a granny flat, and that's going to give you $350 a week, which is going to boost your income. Mate, this has been a great session. This has been a very wholesome session. And there's a question here that Jenny's asked. How will you know when you're there? Because
it's very
this is one thing that
very
philosophical. I see a lot of people doing this. Yeah. Have you thought about that?
I won't know I'm there until I'm there, really. Like, that's a hard question to answer. But so long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing, which I really am in terms of the business that I'm building and, continuing to build out a portfolio, so long as it's not draining or, complete, stress to my lifestyle, then I'll continue to keep doing it. Like, there's no reason for me to stop at the moment. So, unfortunately, probably didn't answer what you wanted. So,
You're not
It's
going to
the
wake
right
up one day,
answer.
unfortunately, and streamers aren't going to come down from a ceiling and a banner will say, "I'm there." But I think over time, it's a very personal question. Over time, I find you start to realize that, you chip away at that little goal, and then you sort of say, well, hey, like you start to just enjoy tasks more. Like if there's something you have to make a call to somebody, and you're like, oh, but you're like, oh, well, yes, yes, I'm making that call, but I sort of am doing it roughly on my own terms rather than somebody forcing me to say I have to do it at this time. So yeah, that's when I think you gradually sort of transition over time.
Absolutely.
I reckon you know when you're there, when you've got more money than you know what to do with. That's when you're there. That's when you know you're there.
Far from that. So.
Yeah, mate. This has been a great session. How do people learn more about you? What you're on about? Because I feel like you've learned a lot from some of your mentors. They've put a lot of knowledge into you, and that you're kind of looking to do that to the next generation. How do people learn more? What's the go?
They could easily find me, whether it's on Facebook Messenger, also website as well. So that's kinfin, kinfin.com.au. You can message me on there, or Instagram, my business page at the moment. So I've taken it down at the moment. So we're undergoing a new strategy on that one. But if you just hit me up on my personal or website, that's probably the easiest way. Emails taku@kinfin, so there's the handle, .com.au.
Love it, mate. This has been a fun session. I've enjoyed it. I think it's very wholesome. It kind of takes me back to the steps that you need to take as a property investor. Like it's hard. No one actually right now the interest rates when you were buying were like 3, 4. They started to drop down to 2, 1, 0. Like, but still, it was incredibly hard. You had to do an extra Uber job. Like, if you're struggling right now and property investing is hard for you right now, yeah, it is. It's always hard. Anything that's worth anything is going to be tough for you. So it's awesome that you've pushed through and now it's worked for you. You've doubled your equity on all your properties. Cracking. Your cash flows are going strong, but that's only because you suffered through the shit stuff.
Gotta go through the pain.
I don't know. One of the overnight successes 10 years in the making, like literally 10 years in the making. Like you bought your first around 10 years ago and you sort of started organizing that meetup sort of 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I think for me, it sort of highlights, I get a little insular. I don't go to as many events these days and probably to some extent, Joe goes probably a lot more than me. But yeah, it takes me back to those sort of, because a lot of those events are coming back. I'm starting to see them pop up, like the sort of Facebook meetups or whereas it used to be property chat. Like go to your local event and leave your credit card home just in case there's a spruiker or two there, and just kind of have some genuine, wholesome conversations, like ask those kind of questions. You might meet your Michael Shah, you might meet your Taku, you might meet Jenny Mole, I'm just sort of mentioning people we've seen throughout the thing today. So thanks for sharing your wisdom and value, and thanks for just being on the journey, Taku, as well.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It was good to get in touch again. And yeah, thanks for introducing me to your community. It was great to chat.
Legend. Appreciate it, guys. Let's go buy a property. See you later.
Yeah, absolutely.